On this episode of Purposely Curious, we discuss a missing person case that, sadly, turned into a murder case. Cassidy Rainwater went missing earlier this year, and as details of what could have possibly happened to her emerged, 2 men were arrested in connection to her disappearance. And as the investigation continued, gruesome details were discovered, and the men were then charged with murder. Trigger warning on this case, guys, so get ready as this episode starts now. Hello, Leonie.
Season's greetings, Mary. How are you?
I'm good. A little chilly, but happy.
Are you like in front of your campfire, like wearing like gloves and mittens and jackets and all that?
No. My campfire is a portable heater in my living room, and I have like these warm wool socks that I bought when I went to Montana, and like sweats, a shirt, long sleeve shirt, and a sweater.
Nice.
How about yourself?
Fortunately, I'm not cold, but I do love the cold, which is weird. Like if it wasn't raining, or should I say, sometimes when it rains, I like to open the window just to hear the rain, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But today it was raining sideways, like really hard. So I'm like, yeah, I can't do that today.
Yeah, it was pretty heavy rain for what we're used to with the wind.
Right.
But the storms in LA come and go really like quickly.
Oh yeah.
So, but the cold weather it leaves after.
Yeah. It's coming.
Did you see the tornadoes that happened?
Yeah.
Was it Friday or?
It was over the weekend, Saturday night maybe, or Sunday, Sunday. God, it's so devastating.
Yeah. It's very unfortunate.
At least one of the tornadoes stayed on the ground for over 200 and something miles.
Yeah, that's
crazy. And then now you're hearing all these weird, sad stories about the employees that were told, like, don't leave, like, you know, like you're not allowed to leave, whatever, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's bizarre. It's like, I don't know. Every time I see those kind of things, I'm like, you would think that they would have shelters built in already, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But I guess they don't. A lot of places don't, because they don't expect to have, you know, 200 tornado warnings in one night, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty interesting and
Crazy.
sad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I hope everyone will be okay. It's a lot of damage, definite, with the drone videos. It's just unfortunate.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, today's episode is a murder case, Leonie.
Murder case.
Yes, you know I love my murder cases.
Something recent, something old, something new?
Recent.
Wow.
So this is about Miss Cassidy Rainwater, which is a case that came up on my radar when I was deep diving into the Murdaugh murders.
Wow.
And I had told Leonie at the time that I really wanted to deep dive into Cassidy's case, although at the time we didn't really have that much information. It was just a local news story that was getting some kind of, how would I say it? You know, the true crime online community was catching on to it.
Right.
And, you know, what we initially heard, again, was just rumors, right, at the time. Pretty much made all of us, and I remember telling Leonie, like, oh my God, there's this like murder case that I'm looking, well, it wasn't a murder case, but it was like, at the time, I was like, there's this case of this missing woman, and there's like rumors of cannibalism and stuff like that. And I told Leonie, but there's not enough information. I feel like it's too soon for me to even make an episode. I don't know if you remember that.
Oh yeah, you were being a total tease. I remember. I'm like, where's she going with this? What are you doing? Like, what? Tell me. And she's like, I'm looking into it.
Yeah, the thing too is that a lot of around that time too, you know, when people were catching on to this, were saying, you know, again, isn't it a bigger story? You know, any kind of serial killer / cannibalism should be like frontline, like front news, right?
Yeah.
But at the time, Gabby Petito case was going, and so was the Murdaugh murders cases. So I think that's why I just got lost in the news, which, speaking of the Murdoch cases, definitely a lot has happened since we did that episode.
Right.
A lot, and an arrest as well. But we'll stick to this case of Miss Cassidy Rainwater. So Miss Cassidy, yeah, go ahead.
Out of the 50 states, which one of the magical states does this case reside in?
Missouri. Windyville, Missouri.
Oh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So she is Miss Cassidy Rainwater. And again, the trigger warning, this is not going to be an easy thing for if you're not into certain details. But if you've listened to other ones like we did of the, I always get this wrong. It's not the Night Stalker.
It is a Night Stalker.
Yeah, I got it right. Yes. So, you know, we discussed some of those gruesome details in that episode, but so basically she was reported missing by her family on August 26th. Apparently she had left her home in early July and they didn't see her since, but they would at least talk to her, and then they didn't hear from her from like somewhere in July, right?
Okay.
So a lot of people might be asking, well, why did it take them a month or so to actually report her missing? So apparently the reason why they waited a few weeks was because she would do this at times where she would leave, you know, not be around for a few weeks, but she would always talk to them on the phone here and there. And I guess what the town is saying and family was that she wasn't always on the right path. You know, she had a troubled life.
Right.
So there is an insinuation that she may have had drug use. We don't know, right? But that for sure family has said she was a troubled person, you know, with a difficult life. Let's just put it like that. So that's why they waited a month. And so the police opened a missing case, but they thought that maybe she did live on her own accord because, again, this is a small town. Have you seen Ozarks?
Yes.
On Netflix?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of like an Ozark type town. Maybe Ozark has more money, I don't know, but the properties are like big, you know, one house with a lot of land around it, and then the neighbor is,
right,
you know, kind of further out. So everyone kind of knows everybody's business. So the police actually, you know, when they started the missing case, thought again that she maybe left on her own accord. And so speaking of how the houses were, so they started questioning a lot of the neighbors. So one of the neighbors that they questioned was James Phelps, who is 58 years old. And they asked him about Miss Cassidy, if he had seen Miss Cassidy, right? The 33-year-old female who went missing.
Okay.
Mr. Phelps, 58, stated he took her in when she had fallen on hard times. So he now is the last person to have seen her, right? She allegedly left his property on her own a month before she was reported missing by her family, which was July 25th. Okay, remember that date, Leonie.
Okay.
July 25th.
All right.
So he stated that he saw her walk up her road. So think of the Ozark. You know, the driveways are long, right?
Right.
Yeah, the big trees. And so he said she went up and a car picked her up, and that was the last she had seen him. He had seen of her, excuse me. So she's a missing person, right? So this here is where kind of the missing case goes. We have a person of interest, but he's saying, you know, she left, but she did stay there in case neighbors had seen her, right? She did stay there when she had fallen on hard times. Because again, remember the neighborhood and the family has said she had somewhat of a troubled life, right?
Right.
So fast forward. So I'm trying to set up the scene. I don't know if I'm doing a good job here, Leonie. What do you think?
Totally. Keep the party going. That's fantastic.
I love his sarcasm. Fast forward a couple of weeks now, right? So she was reported missing August 26th, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then when the police spoke to Mr. Phelps, the last time he saw her was July 25th, right? We're going to fast forward to September 16th. Dallas County sheriffs were contacted by the FBI because the FBI received an anonymous email with pictures of a naked woman being held in a cage.
Oh, no.
Pictures, apparently, per the FBI, that were being shown on the dark web.
Oh, wow.
Now, for those of you who don't know what the dark web is, it's basically a world wide web only accessible by special software, allowing users or websites to remain anonymous and untraceable. I've never been on the dark web, but is it that duck one? Is it a duck?
No, you're thinking of the search browser that's like secure because it doesn't track you and all and all that. DuckDuckGo. No, the dark web. I've been researching it because I've been wanting to talk to an author of a book who's an expert in that field.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't have the courage to log on to it because you need a special browser. Like you can't just go to your Google Chrome and type in, or Safari, type in like, whatever. It's a special browser, and what it does, it disguises where you are. So it could be showing you in Russia the next minute, and then the following you're in Canada, and then it goes to South Africa. So that way, whatever you decide to search or look for or talk to or whatever, it can't be traced, And the crazy things down there is that, you can get, porn is easy to find, right? But we're talking like extreme porn, child porn. That's the kind of stuff that's traded on the dark web. Murder for hire. Like if you wanted to find an assassin, like that's where you find it. If you wanted drugs, if you wanted, a bag of whatever, Vicodin or whatever delivered to your house. The crazy thing is, like, I saw this mini documentary on that, and it showed like somebody ordered drugs, right? Part of the documentary, wanted to see what would happen. And the person's like, here's the crazy thing. They have all my information, including my address, because some random guy just delivered it. And I have no idea who they are, It's so dark and mysterious. But the weird thing is, like, it's not governed. It's just out there, and it has access to a bunch of computers. Okay, think of, because I know you're in the medical field, think of old ass computers that are used in medical billing in the offices, that these medical office assistants might be using, Those are the kind of computers that are hacked into from the dark web, Like, they're usually older, they're just sitting there, they're running Windows 95, whatever, they don't do anything. They just have the software to do billing and whatever, That's the kind of stuff that they break into or even use to store information or store photos. Like, it's so creepy, but at the same time so fascinating because it's so much bigger than everything we know on Google and Facebook and everything that we do, like, legitimately. It's so much bigger and deeper and darker, But
so that's kind of where I was saying, it's a trigger warning. It can be very dark, what I'm going to say.
Yes.
So the FBI received pictures of a woman naked in a big cage. Okay. They have facial recognition. Okay. So at the time, this is what I had heard, right? That it turns out that, they had pictures and some people believe that it was Miss Cassidy. Right?
Right.
So what the rumors were when I mentioned this to you was that there are rumors of cannibalism online with this case. There had been no arrests, right? Just the fact that the FBI then contacted them and, based on the missing case, because I guess they have like facial recognition of pictures, and so they were able to say this woman is missing in this town, so we're going to contact the sheriffs, right?
Right.
And the sheriff saw that it was indeed Miss Cassidy Rainwater. So at this point, again, the rumors are already flying about this picture was found of a woman from this town, right? And there's rumors of cannibalism, but it's all chatter at the time. So that's when I'm like, wow, what's going on here? And there, again, she was missing.
Right.
So at this point, apparently, and they didn't say this, it was only found out in court documents after, is that it seemed like it was Mr. Phelps' home where the cage was.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So this was enough for them to get a search warrant to go to Mr. Phelps' home, right? When they went into the home, they secured, kind of like they did a perimeter, searched all of the The house, again, they were very hush about this, okay? The sheriff's was very hush. And again, Gabby Petito was going on. The Murdochs was blowing up at this time, right? So this is kind of like a hush, you know, you kind of would have to search for information on this case.
Right.
So what they found was when they searched Mr. Phelps' phone, they found about 7 pictures of Miss Cassidy partially nude in cages. And so the cages matched the ones in the FBI picture where, you know, and basically from what the little information they were releasing that, you know, at the time, the cage was also found there. But apparently there was multiple cages. So that was enough to arrest Mr. Phelps on the charges of this missing woman. Well, he hadn't been charged. They just arrested him at this point because they felt they had enough, right? With the phones of Miss Cassidy, the pictures of Miss Cassidy on his phone.
Right.
3 days later, his roommate, for lack of a better term, Norton Phelps, and the reason I say that is because he lived on Mr. Phelps' property, but he lived in a truck. He slept on a truck. He was a truck driver, right? So the police now, you know, they have searched, right? Again, I'm trying to tell you as little as possible so that I can build the case. Because
Right.
at the time, this is all I heard was that they found pictures of Miss Cassidy on Mr. Phelps' phone and they brought him in. This is all the media knew at the time. Mr. Norton, who slept in the trunk on Phelps' property, when the police started to question him, got really nervous and basically then confessed to helping Mr. Phelps, the homeowner, in restraining Cassidy in July before she, quote unquote, left on her own accord. So they're sticking to the she left thing, but he did help her. He did help him, you know, restrain her. Wow. So they arrested him now because Miss Cassidy's still missing. So they charge both of them with kidnapping, basically, because that's all they had from what we've heard.
Right.
Right. So now the two, Mr. Phelps and Mr. Norton, are in jail, waiting to be arraigned. And guess what happens?
What?
Days later, while they're waiting to be arraigned.
What happened?
Mr. Phelps' home on October 4th was burned to the ground.
What?
The whole property was burned. Yes. That's
suspicious, but he wasn't there.
Exactly. So what does that tell you? There's other motherfuckers out there. Yeah. Yes? Oh, no. But see, this is where it starts to get trippy. And this is where the town sheriffs is refusing to, or they're minimizing it. But you and I are like, well, who would want to burn that down? That means there's other players here, right? Yeah. So they're in jail. They burn the house down. The neighbors call and say there's a fire, right? So when the police, the fire department get there, they notice, you know, around the burning home, there is tripwire. And so they called the disposal squad, who then deemed the fire arson when they found devices that were basically on the property that were kind of like hooked up to this tripwire.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So who would do that?
Huh.
Who would do that?
Gosh.
And we're not going to get closure on this because it's like being suppressed, right?
Right.
But what does that tell you? Tripwire and,
I mean, it's somebody with the know-how.
Devices.
Yeah, that's somebody maybe with the military background, you know, or.
But not the two in jail?
I mean, I don't know. I don't know what their backgrounds are. I mean, it could be just somebody with a fascination with survival and hunting and setting traps, that kind of stuff, you know?
But who would trigger it?
Right. That's the thing.
Dun, dun, dun. So now we hear all this. The media is not the media. When I say media, it's like local media, but it's mostly online chatter. When all this was happening, right? So people started to look into the case and look into the rumors, right? And so this is where a lot of people started to say that, especially in the true crime community, from speaking to people, right, was that there have always been rumors of cannibalism in this area. right? The neighbors in the surrounding homes would say that they've always felt that Mr. Phelps was kind of like a weird odd man out.
Right.
And so they always got a bad vibe, right? But the rumors of the cannibalism started when they had heard that they had found, pictures on his phone. Someone had heard rumors that he would sell human flesh. And so remember what you said? Again, none of this is all speculation, but this is before Cassidy is still missing, right? These are rumors that were happening then because I was keeping tabs of everything. A lot of times people in social media get kind of attacked and saying like, oh, you guys are making stuff up, blah, blah, blah. But a lot of times these things, rumors become truth, right?
Yeah.
But there was nothing saying that Cassidy was dead, right? Or that she was murdered, right? Just that she was in a cage. But people in the neighborhood started saying, supposedly he gave someone a sandwich with human flesh. But again, it's like rumor, so most people don't believe it, right?
Right.
A lot of people did talk about the dark web. You yourself said there's a lot of crazy shit on the dark web. So then people started to say online, exactly what you said. People will do human trafficking on the dark web. People will, just like you said, crazy shit on the dark web, right? And so if these pictures were from the dark web, the ones that the FBI got, now more people are saying, oh yeah, there's some fishy shit here. This is like some psycho shit here, right?
Right.
But the sheriff's department was being very tight-lipped, right? The locals, one of the things that the locals also said was that in that area, that road that goes through Phelps is kind of known like as a trafficking ring type road. People would always go missing around that area, like on the main road, right?
Oh, wow.
And so one person said, our murder rate is low, but the rate of the missing is high. We are the land of the missing. So now neighbors are starting to talk. Like, they're like, definitely there's human trafficking. They're starting to talk about cannibalism, but also because they're a small town, they're like, well, maybe we're overthinking all these rumors, right?
Right.
What do you think right now?
It's crazy. I don't even know where to go. I mean, it's just, it's interesting because these guys seem like they're well versed, like they're researched, like they know what they're doing. Like an amateur would just probably do stupid things and eventually get caught,
Mm-hmm.
So going on the dark web is next level, because that can't be traced. It's hard to trace that, very difficult, but also at the same time, when you get to the topic of cannibalism, that's something that will come up if you see it, right? Like if I said, hey, Mary's a cannibal, right? I mean, everybody's just going to laugh, right? And be like, haha, yeah, Mary, she, whatever, but it's because it's not true. So you need a witness, or you need like a solid somebody to say that, hey, no, I seriously saw him cook up a leg and barbecue it and serve it in a sandwich,
Mm-hmm.
Like for somebody to come out and say, like, you don't just make that up, like you have to back that one up. So I wonder where that came from,
Exactly. Yeah. And not only that, so not only is the chatter of cannibalism going on, and then when his house magically, arson is the reason for it burning down days after he was arrested, a lot of people started to say maybe it's a lot deeper than we think.
Right.
Maybe there's more people involved than we think.
Oh, that's gotta be for sure.
Yeah, but the police was like, shush, guys, the sheriff's department. Now, these are a small sheriff's department, right? They're like, you guys are going on a crazy tangent here. There's none of that, He did a whole press conference.
Wow.
So now we have, two people for kidnapping, and we have a missing person, and we have the home of the suspect where the cages were found to have been burned to the ground by arson.
So was the evidence burned along with the cages or?
Well, that's the thing. We didn't know anything because they were very tight-lipped, right? And the FBI, because of the dark web and everything, was kind of helping the small sheriffs. So they kept a lot of it quiet as far as what they did get or what they didn't, as I guess they build their case.
Okay, that tells me something that tells me that this is bigger than they know. That there's a ring or there's a bigger group involved, because when they're ready to just release the story, they would just go to the media and tell all. But then now, if they're keeping information so quiet, they're probably looking to bust the other people involved, or catch them or something. And they gotta probably be local. They're probably close by,
Yeah. So that's all the information that, was out in October. So I was like, okay, there's not enough information, but who would be the arsonist here, right?
Right.
And obviously she's still missing, right? So it turns out that when they did, and this only came out after the fact, after the house was burned and everything, it turns out that the police, when they did the search warrant, actually asked for a refrigerated truck to come to the home. Like those big trucks that are refrigerated.
Right.
Yeah. So we found that out after, because apparently they had found refrigerators on the property. And they're on the property, not only were there cages, there were also meat hooks everywhere. And these looked kind of like what a farmer would have, right? You would hook the animal, right, on there. So they asked for that. And so we found this out after that they actually did take stuff in that refrigerated truck.
Wow.
What they found in the refrigerators many, many packages, which would explain the refrigerated vehicle, with things that were labeled meat packages, right?
Right.
So the meats were taken for further analysis. While, people are still speculating of Cassidy, was she still alive? Her family at this point had posted on social media kind of like a memorial post as if she was no longer alive. But the public still don't know that, right?
Right.
Norden is the guy who lived on the truck on Phelps' property, right? Who confessed to, trying to subdue Cassidy to help Mr. Phelps, right?
Right.
In the original confession was then made public, and in that confession he also stated that they used to go to Walmart to find people.
What?
That's in court documents, but what the fuck do you need to go to Walmart to find people for? Again,
scary.
only, yeah, okay.
But here's the thing though, Walmart is not exactly, Nordstrom's, it's like, it's a store where like the needy go to because things are cheaper and they carry everything, So it's probably, and this is something they probably know in their MO, is that maybe they're stalking those people that are easier because they can easily, be persuaded to do things, like, hey, need some help, carrying some bags. I'll pay $50. Can you help me? That kind of stuff. And then they lock you in the van and drive you away,
Yeah. And that's one of the things I see a lot. Like, I love TikTok. It's like a pastime of mine. But sometimes I'll get a video of a woman saying, let me tell you about this experience I had or I saw, and it can happen at Target. It can happen anywhere.
Of course.
But definitely, apparently, Mr. Norton said that we used to go to Walmart to find people. But he said that, but then didn't elaborate on it on the court documents. So of course, what do? We start speculating, right?
Yeah.
So, a lot of the locals, when we're talking about Phelps' property, said that he used to sell meat to the locals, right? So, some people started to wonder because of the rumors, was the meat he was selling human?
Oh, wow.
But the police then started to say, no, you guys are speculating. Rumors were that certain people that worked for the police department said that they found several bodies. Again, speculation, right? It could mean maybe several remains, several different pieces of remains. We don't know, right?
Right.
It could, because when they say remains, it could be one person. They're just split. The remains are separated, right? So people heard that and were like, oh my God, they found several bodies. And again, we're still missing Miss Cassidy, right?
Right.
Then locals started to talk about, because this is the talk of the town, Cassidy's mom had gone missing in 2007. Flipping the page, yes. Her name was Tracy. Now, remember when I said the neighborhoods, they were all neighbors, but they're very far apart. So when Miss Tracy, Cassidy's mom, went missing, she apparently had gone out and her family actually reported her missing the next day. Apparently, no one had seen her. No one had seen her. She went missing for a year until 2008, when a farmer found what seemed to look like shoes and human remains. And it was confirmed that it was Cassidy's mom, Tracy, in 2008. Those were her body parts.
Oh, damn.
But it turns out that at the time, some of the body parts were kind of on someone's property, and it turns out that it was Phelps' grandparents' property.
Okay.
The coincidence?
Gosh.
2007 is what? Not, 20 years ago? Almost?
No, it's,
Almost.
What's it, 10,
14
years. Yeah, 14 years.
The point is, the link here is Phelps. They found it on Phelps' grandparents' property.
Right.
Coincidence?
So
this is what is the neighbors are talking about now. And then remember, they're just like, oh my God, remember her mom? They found her in 2007. Didn't they question Phelps' family back then?
Right.
Coincidence? Maybe.
Does it say about how far Norton lived from Phelps?
No, he lived on his property.
Oh, he did?
In a truck. Yeah. Yeah.
Gosh.
Yeah. Now, we don't know if this is a coincidence. Could be. Huge coincidence, if it is.
I doubt it, though.
During the search on present times, we're in Cassidy's time, they came across a van that matches a van that went missing. There was a van of 3 girls who went missing back then in Missouri called the Springfield 3. A lot of people started to speculate if that was the van of the women who went missing 30 years ago.
Oh, wow.
So I looked up this case, and it's basically about Miss Cheryl Levitt, Susie Streeter, and Stacy McCall, and they did go missing, and that was the van that they were in. But the pictures are stuff that the internet has from court documents. But the police have not said anything. But people, and it looks like the one they were, but it could be any car, right?
Right.
There's millions, but the point is people then started to speculate again on that. Now, we're coming to the conclusion, Leonie, and this is the sad part, okay? On November 17, many of the rumors were confirmed regarding Miss Cassidy Rainwater. In court documents, it was reported that when the FBI showed pictures of Cassidy nude in the cage, the prosecutor stated that there were also pictures and trigger warning of Cassidy being strung up on a gantry crane, which would be used by most farmers for deers or animals. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. Wow.
In court documents, it was also reported that there were pictures of her actual dismemberment. That's fucking scary.
So they were documenting her torture or abuse in cages. They have pictures of all that then. And probably video
too. They
too.
took pictures of every fucking step. And not only that, how did her picture alive, naked, in a cage end up on the fucking dark web?
Right.
These motherfuckers were doing it I don't think she's the first.
No. No. These are not amateurs. They've been doing this for a while. it appears. And to put it on the web, right? What does that say? They're like the capture of the murder dismemberment does not count if you can't tell the story. Mm-hmm. So they put it on the web to either tell the story and say, hey, look what we did. Or maybe they're selling those photos online to somebody else who's buying,
Yeah.
Somebody being tortured. I mean, because there's a lot of sick people out there who are into that shit.
Exactly. And it's kind of when you were talking about how dark the dark web is, now when we're putting all the pieces together, you're like, oh, for me, there's no way she was the only one.
Right.
Maybe, could it be the first one they murdered? Maybe, but maybe these human trafficking was real.
Right.
And then if Norton was saying we would go to Walmart, even though he didn't elaborate. And again, when I talk about this case as we go forward, they're trying to minimize the case. Okay.
Right.
So in court documents, they also took the cranes, the cages, and items from the freezer, right? Which they added to the court documents. Some of them appear to be human flesh. That means that they took the skin off. Think about that.
Yeah.
That's some sick shit. So you're going to tell me this is their first rodeo? No. Right? But the police is still minimizing, even to this day, that it was a one-time thing. Who burned down the house?
Right.
I got questions, guys. So let me continue, right? So what appeared to be human flesh, one of the packages was labeled 7/24. And they think it's the day that they put it in the freezer. She was reported to last be seen by him on 7/25. Right?
Right.
So they're assuming this is the date 7/24, the day it was refrigerated. So they also found skeletal remains. So the flesh and the skeletal remains were separate. They have since determined that the flesh in the freezer through DNA testing did belong to Miss Cassidy Rainwater. In court documents, Timothy Norton, his so-called roommate who lived on the truck, right, on his property, said that he then kind of changed his story and said he held down Cassidy while Phelps strangled her and suffocated her. And then they moved her to the crane, right? And then that's where they took off her flesh and dismembered her. So he is now, they put her body at that point in the tub, right? The point is he's trying to get off lightly. And so he's basically confessing to Phelps being the mastermind. Prosecutors are still saying they didn't find anything that would indicate that there were more victims in court documents. But keep in mind, they burned down the house. Someone burned down the house with tripwire and explosives. Whether it was him, he must have sent somebody out there.
Right.
Unless maybe an animal triggered it. I don't know.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, the timing could be coincidence if it's close to, near after the arrest or whatever, but maybe it was like, he had it set up and he told somebody, hey, all you have to do is just trip the wire and it'll burn itself down,
That's a possibility.
And that way there's no evidence of there's nobody walking up there with fuel and setting anything on fire,
Yeah.
But here's what.
Or maybe the police found what was visible, right? And he maybe had stuff like buried in the walls. You don't know, right? If you were to go online and search the house of Mr. Phelps, there was even windows, before it burned down, and you can find them online where the windows were already boarded up.
Right.
So he was like that neighbor that no one really knew. The house was going to shit, and all these rumors now seem to be plausible with how they found her body. It was fucking torture, and they documented every fucking step. And the only reason they got caught was because someone in the dark web sent it to the FBI anonymously.
So how would they know? You know, is it like
That's my point.
Is it like
That's
somebody
why I
who,
don't think it's the first one.
right? So is it somebody who's like maybe they have a relationship with these guys? Like maybe it started off like, hey, you want to buy some pictures? Like, yeah, sure. And then it became like, hey, send me some stuff. And the idiots are probably stupid enough to write their address or something, you know, like, then eventually the guy's like, hey, this is, you know, here's a tip that these guys are doing some crazy shit, you know, like, but you know what I'm wondering though? Now that the house, the cabin or whatever it is burned to the ground, right?
Mm-hmm.
What about the whole property though? Like, is it now up for grabs? Can they search and send in the FBI dogs and start digging and look for other remains?
I'm sure they have the capability, obviously, if he's in jail.
Right.
And they probably have searched. But remember when I was telling you they're keeping very tight lip about this?
Because it sounds like there's a bigger ring that they want to stop or capture.
Potentially, because all of the stuff that I was hearing is stuff that I told you in September, where I was like, I hear this case.
Right.
Sounds like there might be cannibalism, you know, and it's only until 2 months later of them not leaking anything, of just people piecing stuff together, that they then charged them with murder on the 17th. And so they're not talking. When Phelps has been on his arraignment, very calm, no biggie, you know. But a lot of people believe that a lot of the rumors that they were saying are, you know, this only shows that the rumors were true. And keep in mind, her mother went missing 2007. They found her body near Phelps' grandparents' house in 2008.
Wow.
So some people believe this could be a serial killer, even though the cops are sticking to their story that this is the only case. But, you know, they were in a business, it seems like, to sell pictures to the dark web.
And I guess that is smart of law enforcement to say that, if that is the card they're playing, is to say that, hey, this is it, you know, there's nobody else involved, because then that puts the other people involved at ease and not on the run, you know?
Right.
That way they can continue doing what they're doing and they will be caught.
Right. So Miss Cassidy Rainwater unfortunately did not have, you know, I don't even know what to say. It's a terrible way to go. At least he's in jail, right? And so is Mr. Norton. He's trying to play dumb now that he was just coerced into this.
Right.
But, you know, if it is bigger than we know, I'm sure we'll find out, or maybe we won't. But a lot of people do believe with certainty this was not their first time. And they do believe there might be more. And again, all those things I talked about, the speculation is still speculation, right?
Right.
But plausible. Very plausible. And what have we learned is that when you think you've heard the craziest, you hear more of crazy stuff.
Right.
So that's how they were able to determine that Miss Cassidy was no longer with us, is that her skin was in a refrigerator labeled 724.
Wow. This reminds me of a famous serial killer from I believe he was in Wisconsin, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe the guy's name is Ed Gein. Does that name ring a bell? Ed Gein.
No.
His case inspired a bunch of movies, including Psycho, including the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which which Texas Chainsaw Massacre involved cannibalism, you know, the storyline and all that, and you know, capturing people and dismembering them, you know. But also in Psycho, it was more about his obsession with his mother, you know. So in that story, I think, if I'm not mistaken, like he tried to keep his dead mother alive. I can't remember if he killed his mother or not, but when she died, he like went off the rails. Like he became crazier, you know, and he tried to keep her alive, you know. And of course her body's rotting, you know, and then stories started to come out, and I guess he admitted in court, you know, he had sex with the body and a lot of weird things, you know, awful things. And it kind of sounds sort of like that a little bit, you know, like what happened to the mom's body, you know, like Because it sounds like if he didn't kill her, like he obviously kept her body, or did something.
Are we talking about the mom or Miss Cassidy?
The mom.
The mom, yeah. And again, this is just speculation because he was in question. It was his grandparents apparently, but people are like, "Oh, that's too much of a coincidence." But it is a small town too.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like what I'm gathering is that yes, there's a lot of rumors, and we learned from the Gabby Petito that one was Rumorville 24/7, and a lot of the rumors were like not true.
Right.
But what we do, besides when there's a case that gets too big, a lot of the times when it's just like a case like this, a lot of the rumors do become, facts. And unfortunately, we don't know if they ate some of her flesh, right? We don't know if they found the entire skin. But what they did find was skin, so they obviously took it apart from her body. And that, to me, if they didn't eat it, that still falls within the cannibalism realm, in my opinion. It's unfortunate, and it's fucking scary.
Well, here's the other thing also. They can probably trace it to very much how they can trace how animals died is they look at the bones, and they look for teeth marks on the bones. So if one of these idiots, did something weird and started, barbecuing her parts of her body that had bones in it and started biting into the bones, that would be apparent.
Yeah. So as it stands right now, they filed murder charges, right? The hearing is set for February for Miss Cassidy Rainwater. And so a lot is going on. There's I believe one of the lawyers withdrew, which is Norton's lawyer. So I think it's probably too much to handle if this is a small town.
Yeah, right.
So people are learning a lot. Or he could have heard something, right? And said, "Oh, this is a losing case. I don't want this stress," and maybe took off.
Yeah.
But it's definitely, all I can say is that it didn't make the mainstream media. And I only found out about it because I'm a nerd and I go online, and once I hear something, I start looking at other things, right? That's how I ended up looking at those cases of the 3 women who went missing in Missouri.
Right.
So the van does look very similar, but there's no information from the police that it does match, because I'm assuming that would have been a huge story, so I don't think it's real. But could be a coincidence, or who knows? Maybe it's related. I don't know, but
right.
It's definitely a very sad case. And, apparently Miss Cassidy leaves behind a son who was living with, I don't think she had custody. And so the dad has, the son, but it's definitely, if he's not old enough, or if he is, to know, one day he's going to find out how they found his mom.
Right.
And that, to me, breaks my heart. Yeah. So, yeah. And it's depressing. So I don't know how to end this episode, Leonie.
Well, I mean, you could end this episode with a nice little PSA, because again, this took place near the Ozarks, right? And
I think it might be, but the way that I saw the pictures, the only reason I brought the Ozarks is because it reminded me of the show and how to drive to one place you have to get in the car and drive far.
Oh yeah.
But I want to say it might be, but I'm not sure. I'm terrible at geography.
No, I mean, the reason why I mention it is because it's a good reminder, and this is like from one of those crime FBI, interviews that I saw not so long ago that really shocked me, is how 800 people go missing a year in national parks.
Mm-hmm.
This is like, hey, I'm going to Joshua Tree for the weekend. Never seen again. Hey, I'm going to Yosemite. Never seen again,
Mm-hmm.
And not because of accidents or, they got lost in the woods. No, nothing. They have a strong belief that there are serial killers out there and people that are up to no good, like these guys,
Mm-hmm.
that want to capture, torture, or, or traffic people. They're out there and they lurk in the woods, and they're just waiting for that single, female who's out there, doing her own thing, and the single guy. who's out there doing his own thing. Hey, camping wilderness by myself. Look at me, selfie, clearing my mind or, whatever. And it's just like, it's a good reminder. It's like, don't go alone,
Mm-hmm.
Like it's perfectly a beautiful thing to go explore these places. And it's not just that nature is dangerous, but apparently there's awful people out there that are up to no good, wanting, looking, stalking, following from a distance too, from a distance.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's because, I'm once I got the taste of, I told you some stories of going, up to, some awesome places, camping out there in the snow and all that. I wanted to do it again, and I thought to myself, I'm gonna go alone, I'm gonna go alone, take my camera, do photography, and then I started to look into this and I started to realize, I will never come back alive. Like,
Mm-hmm.
because you don't know who's out there, and so it's always nice. Take your friend, boyfriend, significant other, whoever, take people with you. Go as a group. Make it a fun outing. Enjoy these places, but don't go alone.
Question: is Reddit working on your end?
Reddit.
Yeah.
Let's see. So if I go to reddit.com.
Yeah.
Nope.
REDD. It's out. Okay.
Yeah. I wonder if I got hacked.
Maybe. Okay. So I had looked up Cassidy Rainwater Reddit, and every link I was clicking said unavailable, but then I went to reddit.com and I'm getting the same thing.
Right.
I was going to say, ooh, did they take down all of their deep dive pages on this case?
No,
I guess the website's down.
Yeah.
All right. We won't speculate then. I'm glad we checked.
Yeah.
But anyways, so yeah, everyone stay safe. All women and men and children, make sure you look at your surroundings and, pray that we're all going to be safe from these people. It's so scary.
Yeah.
So thank you, Leonie, for joining me again for another episode of Purposely Curious.
Always my pleasure, Mary.
Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye. That was episode 81 of the Purposely Curious podcast. Make sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on most podcast platforms, and follow us on social media at Purposely Curious on Instagram and at Purposely C Pod on Twitter. That's Purposely the letter C Pod. Until next time, you know what to do.